thought it was done. Is that the Open Table Chattanooga office, 701 Cherry Street? Andrew says good. Okay.
Excellent. So we get all that. We get all that. Papers we love. It's a great meetup. Go to it. Check it out. Okay, I think we're ready. I think we're live streaming. Mike Harrison is going to talk to us about man-in-the-middle attacks today. Get his slides up. And while we're doing that, everybody give it up for Mike Harrison.
Come on, who didn't fall in love with Angelina Jolie that time? So hacking before this movie meant something very different to me. I'm old enough, and a few other people in the room remember that hacking was what we called it when you sat up late at night and beat on things until you figured them out and made them work. It wasn't always nefarious. The nefarious people were freaks, P-H-R-E-A-K-S, and that stood for the people who are hacking phone systems, hence the PH, and doing phone freaking, using red boxes, blue boxes, tone generators to simulate coins. That movie pretty much changed the vernacular for the world, and hacking became this glitzy, punky, kind of sexy thing. You got girl hackers and boy hackers and cute stuff. I'm not so glamorous. That's me. And I've been hacking in the old sense since 1980-something. In the new sense, also since 1980-something, I've run bulletin boards, built an internet service provider, and for protection purposes and doing some criminal investigations, I've been using hacking tools for something like 30 years. Once upon a time, many people don't know this, SANS.org and dshield.org were hosted here in Chattanooga on East Main Street at my place. I used to do an awful lot of setting up honeypots and things like that. I don't do that anymore. At some point you decide, I don't want to know all the weird, crappy email server hacking going on in the world, and kind of isolate yourself from that and learn to sleep again and ignore it. But the tools and the mentalities involved in hacking is still useful. And something that I find interesting is a lot of the current generation of programmers don't know about those tools and technologies because they're kind of verboten. In fact, I'm going to take a break. Dan Mailman's here. It's my special guest from Art 120, and he's teaching young kids how to program in Python with Raspberry Pis and things like that. Do you ever get into the evil side? So this is where I live. Mostly work for Utiliflex. And Utiliflex is theoretically prepaid software for utilities. In reality, I talk to multiple corporate systems and payment gateways through, that looks about right. Just way too much crap glued together. And we live in a world where this vendor has XML, the next guy does SOAP XML. Some vendors do multiple. I just did an integration we'll show a little bit of with a payment gateway, a single payment gateway provider in Nigeria. This is their version of the Federal Reserve Bank and MasterCard all kind of rolled up into one. And in one interface, they use XML snippets, SOAP XML, and JSON, all at the same time. Yes, it was contracted out to 3 different parties, and the test spec for it's just insane. CSV, I still see a lot of CSV in the world. I even see from Oracle CC&B, God, I love the Java world. They have an export interface that exports CSV. It's wrapped in HTML with table data, table rows surrounding each row of the CSV. So you do get a row of CSV with commas and things like that, but it's all stuck into that. And that's a standard Oracle tool. What I hate is to the person using the web browser, it looks like CSV. Until you take it apart, you go, that's not CSV. So some assumptions for this talk. We live in a webbish world, HTTP, PS, things like that. Most of us do integration as server-to-server type now. If you're talking to Twilio, Clickatel, a payment gateway, we typically aren't doing an awful lot of API work from browser to server, but these techniques still work the same. I live in a world where there's poor or missing documentation. Anybody else? There's nobody intelligent on the other end. Hey, I get an error 404 when I go to the URL you sent me. What's a 404? I mean, I've actually had that. What's an error 404? And oftentimes, unfortunately, in my world, there's no dev or test system. There's no sandbox to play with stuff. There's only testing or manipulating things in the live world. And most of the world out here that goes, oh, there should be a 3-step QC, dev, sandbox, whatever. Unfortunately, I recently did an integration where the test system was done using a certain set of Java tools, and the live system was using a much older production version of Java that didn't like the exact same XML. So sometimes you go, oh, it doesn't work in the real world, and we got to fix it in the real world on the real servers and figure out what's going on. And my other gripe, normal tools aren't showing the truth. Nice lady in Nigeria I just played with was getting brackets with dashes in between the brackets in the XML because her tool was showing a dash where in reality what was there was a line feed. What's really funny is they send me stuff with line feeds and spaces between the XML, but they can't take it back. So tools, things that you use to parse XML, parse data, deal with HTML, aren't showing you what's really there. And so you come up with ways to figure out what's going on. If you're writing one side of the system, you can do some application logging. I live in PHP. Please don't shoot me. PHP is a terrible language. It's a wonderful tool. This is something you'll see in insane amounts of my code. I think almost everything, it's either live, commented out, or wrapped in an if statement, says something on the order of grab everything that they send me, especially the raw input, that line right there, and also whatever else they send me through the poster get variables, and log it to a file. I got a bad habit of using /temp because it gets deleted when I reboot the server. Lazy. I could put it in other places too. Please put it in other places. Like I said, it's a bad habit. But I tend to put out as much information as I can raw. That doesn't always work because you can't always be the other API. I'll pick on Adam and Will. There are two systems, and they're not getting into their code to modify it, but your job is to glue those two systems together. So you can't go to Will and go, hey, can you log me and tell me what's going on? Or worse, the company that Will worked for died 7 years ago, and you're having to talk to his system, and you're having to figure out what's going on. So some other ways. Oh, by the way, this is an application log. This is the one I was talking about. This is what they send me. Good-looking XML. But if I send it back to them like that, their system bars. So we send them back one consistent line, no spaces, carriage returns, like XML should be. But in the real world, an awful lot of systems will take it either way. They throw away the spaces, and you get nice looking crap, redundant, fat. And yeah, I blanked out the password. We see lots of stuff like that. That's actually a really nice, clean SOAP XML. By the way, does anybody actually use SOAP as SOAP, or is it just an extra stupid wrapper layer on a RESTful XML post? Nobody actually uses what SOAP's supposed to do? Okay. I've never seen it either. Next step up is logging through a relay. Let me see if I can get this to... If you want the code for this, it's up on my website. I do a lot of variations of these. I'll stick something on a server somewhere and tell them that's the actual URL. And they go, oh, awesome, I can talk to that. And all that does is take whatever they send it, relay it on, take whatever the other system spits out and sends it back to them and says, hey, here's the raw junk. I use a lot of curl. Curl is probably the best Swiss Army knife on the internet as far as I'm concerned for doing this type of stuff. Whether you use it in PHP or command line, it is the tool. Everybody know what curl is? Okay, if you don't, curl is, there's a few people who've got the eyes over glaze here. Curl is probably the best Swiss Army knife for doing webbish type stuff. on a command line on a Linux box or on a Mac. You can emulate a web browser, post and get files. Several of the tools I'm about to show you will output the things that they see as sniffers as a curl command so that you can capture something and go, oh, I got the thing from them. Let me use curl and send it again 16 times while I debug it. So if you don't know curl, take a look at curl. Back to my tools slide. I talk about this all the time. People go, oh, there's objects and there's hashes and arrays, and I got bad news. I really think there's only text. And to me, it's all just text. Something that a lot of people don't understand is when their tools lie to them. I use some really old basic tools, mostly because I trust them. I use Xterm as a terminal window because, well, so far it hasn't lied to me. I've used some of the newer cool terminal windows. I love the one that comes in Enlightenment. It's really cool and has all the little fancy cursor effects and all that. It's not UTF compliant. You can't edit a binary file in it. You can't do all kinds of things, but man, is it cool looking. It looks like something the hackers would use. I use an old editor called Joe. Why? Because I've been using it for about 30 years, and so far it hasn't lied to me. It is binary safe. It's got a hex edit mode. And if you don't have a hex edit mode compatible editor, learn how to use a hex editor. It's useful. In fact, is Jake here? Jake did not make it today. Young man last week, I helped out by showing him that he could use a hex editing tool and change the MAC addresses in a binary load file and change the MAC addresses in a Wi-Fi router he was having problems with. And he's like, wow, that was so easy. Because Sean looks at me. Sean, how many times have you used the hex editor in the olden days? Yeah, you need a good hex editor. Something else we notice when we start sniffing is you'll see UTF-8, special character hell. Used to see a lot of character, I think it's 240, as spaces in Microsoft stuff. They stopped doing that. I haven't seen it in a while. But systems would break. You'd see it as a space. And until you pulled it up in a hex editor, you wouldn't realize it was a null. So let's pretend we can't control our code, and let's start debugging things through the web server. Does everybody know that your web server probably compresses stuff? Web servers tend to use gzip and will compress the data that they send. If you're going to start debugging things and you want to see raw text, you don't have to, but it really helps in debugging to turn off the compression. In Apache, it's in deflate.conf. And I just comment out the lines because you got to put them back later. If you don't put them back later, somebody will eventually complain, possibly not. I shouldn't admit that I've run production servers with deflate off and nobody seems to notice. One of the advantages of living in a world where we've got 100 megabit per second internet and really fast computers, that doesn't matter. When you're playing around with the second and third world, it makes all the difference in the world. They're on 14.4 modem connections, bad satellite uplinks. Things like that. So it is important. But if you turn that off, it will save you a separate step later, and that the web server will talk to everything via plain text. And yes, it will compress things even when it HTTPS's them. See, not really double encryption, but you've got an obfuscation layer on top. So, old favorite tool. There are real Ethernet sniffers. EtherApe, Wireshark. These things look at TCP/IP packet headers. They can manipulate things at a packet level, and if you're a real hacker, you're going to do that kind of stuff. As an application developer, man, if you're having to work about stuff like that, then your network guys ought to be beat over the head with a baseball bat, because if your TCP/IP data headers and things like that are wrong, you got serious problems. As an application programmer, Sniff It is really nice. This is Sniff It in an interactive mode. This is showing my personal web server doing some basic stuff. We've got, pretty much all web and a little bit of email going on right now. One of the cool things about it is you can pick a stream and see the stream. And so that's my SSH session. I wanted to show something. It's really hard to capture most web traffic. It's really fast. But you can, if you're watching an FTP or a socket connection or whatever, you can pull up that connection. You used to be able to watch email. Again, email now runs so fast on fast servers and fast connections, it's hard to capture. But we used to see SMTP traffic go, hello, mail server, mail from Sean Stoddard at blah, 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 you know, and go on through the list. You don't get to watch it anymore, but the tool is nice because you can. So what you do need to do is run it from a command line and capture that data so you can look at it. So on a server, on a Linux machine, BSD, Mac, Sniffet's available for almost everything, and it's a really minimal sniffer. You can run it in the foreground. I oftentimes run it in the background, and it writes out files showing you from IP address and port to IP address and port everything that's going on. This is showing just a really fast, I did a really simple thing just to show getting a web page and it being redirected somewhere else. There's the two files. There's me from and to, and it replied on port 80 back to what port number. It's IP address and port number. And if you cat those files, pull them up in an editor, whatever, you can actually see what's going on behind the scenes in the web server. The order here is reversed just because the file names were that way. I said get, and I'm using work as an example, get vico.utiliflex.com. That's what I'd put in the web browser. Here's what it told the web server it could support, including some cookies. The web server responded with a 302 error not found, which is, it's not found, but I've got a redirect for you as a 302. And here's the new location. This is a redirect. Go to https vico.utiliflex.com. Now the problem is that works really great on port 80. It doesn't work once you hit that HTTPS, which is what we're going to get into, is how do you deal with encrypted traffic? How many of you have ever looked at your web traffic at that level? Ooh, good crowd. A lot of people don't, and the web is this magic place where things just work. And when you learn what's going on at the header level, you'll find that, especially when dealing with XML SOAP, all the magic's usually in the header. I see a smile. You've had SOAP action problems, haven't you? So other weird things you can do with Sniffet capturing data. Back in the day before browser plugins, I'd run Sniffet on a local computer, and if I wanted to capture a video, I'd run a Sniffet session, capture that binary file, that video that I was watching, to a file, and actually end up with a .mp3 or a .mp4 or whatever to the list. There's a whole bunch of other silly, useful things you can do with it. My brain wasn't working last night, so I'm going to throw that one up there. It's a really good way to capture binary data that if they won't let you get it from somewhere, you can grab it. Problem with Sniffet is that sometimes you can't run it where you want to. So you get to attack your network. Some of you will recognize these tools. Does everybody, Dan's smiling.
I like the one in the middle.
So the problem with Ethernet traffic is that you've either got to be on one end or the other, or in the middle. A lot of times in testing and debugging, getting in the middle is the easiest place to get. And depends on where it is physically. But if your server over here is at 1 and 1 and your one over here is at Linode, you're not getting in the middle, you might be able to run some things through your development station and see it. But in case you've got a dev environment where you're playing around with, some things worth knowing. You can buy cool little 4-way hacking taps, plug 2 things in and it mirrors whatever's going on out the other ports. That is a fancy looking version of what several of us have made in the middle. So hacking 101 in the old days was you would have a machine with 2 Ethernet cards, and you would hook each card to the transmit line of the other computer so that you could pick up what was going on from computer to computer without becoming part of the session. What's cool about that is you can't answer. You don't have a transmit pair off of your computer. You're receive only on 2 lines. So I can receive from Dan and I can receive from Adam, and I'm sitting here in the middle and I'm listening to them, but I have no way to talk back to them. So my Ethernet card can't answer, can't act, doesn't respond to ping requests. It is completely transparent. The gadget in the far right hand does the same thing. It's a hacking tap. Oh, the really old way? That's a hub. Some of you don't remember hubs, but once upon a time, you used to be able to buy little 4 and 5 port things that sent all the traffic to all the ports all the time. They weren't switches, they were hubs. I still have 2. One goes in one of my laptop bags. It says mine, do not use for anything other than. The other one is now shrink wrapped in a box and saving for future use. Because getting a hub is getting really hard to find, and sometimes you want to watch all the traffic. You can plug things through a hub. In a really nice network environment now, you can have tap ports on a switch if you've got really nice Ethernet switches, and worth knowing that a real NOC, probably every switch in the NOC has a monitoring port that they can monitor or duplicate any other or combinations of ports and monitor your traffic, and that's how things get sniffed. The last one is Wi-Fi. Everything on Wi-Fi is broadcast to everybody all the time. So Ethernet cards normally only listen to what's on your network addressed to you by MAC address. So if you've got a MAC address, it doesn't listen to stuff going to another computer on the local network. But good Ethernet cards, and I mean $12 ones nowadays, all have promiscuous mode. You can turn promiscuous mode on. There's an IF config, your Ethernet name, promisc. And if you look at it, you'll see right about there, that one's running in promiscuous mode. By the way, there are ways to scan a network and see if cards are working in promiscuous mode because they'll answer to things that they wouldn't normally answer to. But once you've got an Ethernet card listening to everything, Adam's seen this, he smiles, he knows Ether 8. I love Ether 8. It is the best cyberpunk eye candy for managers and venture capitalists and all that. It looks so cool. It really does. It's monitoring traffic and shows you all of what you're connecting to. So for this little demonstration shot, I pulled up CNN. For one CNN page, this is all the places that page talks to. That's all the cookie trackers and the snarfs and the video sources and the caching and Akamai web endpoints, and that's everything that it talks to pull up one page on CNN. It's a handy tool while debugging your own web stuff because one of my favorite things is, oh, this web page is slow. But if I turn off the font, all of a sudden my web page is fast again. Well, the reason is the font, and if you watch it through here, is a huge download from somewhere in Uzbekistan, and you didn't realize that that was taking 5 seconds, and that's why your web page is taking so long to load. Ether 8 has uses, but it's mostly eye candy. It's just a fun tool. There are variations of it for Mac. The Linux version, apt-get installed Ether 8, always works. So a quick thing about man in the middle, as we're going to get into that. I didn't bring my other toy bag. I've done this demonstration at DC 423, which is a local hacker convention or hacker group. You can set up a Wi-Fi access point, park outside of a Starbucks, go inside of a Starbucks, use little tiny portable. Oh, wait a minute. Battery-operated Wi-Fi access point. And the next thing you know, you are a man-in-the-middle attack at a place. Coffee shop, work, wherever. And I grabbed 2 graphics to get started. A man-in-the-middle attack is the evil guy in the middle of what would normally be not so nasty traffic. Part of what's really going on, we'll get into this in more detail, that shows a really bad example of an attack where you're in the middle and you're actually changing what's going on. So a man-in-the-middle attack might change a chat session, might grab or copy your login to your bank account, things like that. We did a really nice chat demo a few years ago where a guy was chatting with his girl, I remember Skype or whatever it was, and we started interjecting comments in this chat session. Both parties knew what was going on, but it was a good example. Tools for doing this are included in a really nice tool called Man-in-the-Middle Proxy. And it's got all kinds of nefarious purposes, but I think it's one of the coolest debugging tools out there. And I'm not going to show the dark side. The dark side includes things like generating on-the-fly SSL certificates. Do you remember a few weeks ago what prompted this was, I can't think of his first name, stood up here and talked about certificates. There he is. What prompted this? Aaron. Is that right, Aaron? Aram, was talking about SSL certificates, and he talked about man-in-the-middle attacks, and I'm like, oh yeah, what a wonderful dark hole to dive into. Here I am. So there's a whole bunch of scripts that go in the middle, man-in-the-middle proxy that will help you relay certificates. If you have a compromised certificate authority, and we won't talk about Symantec, now owns a company, is it Blue Coat? There used to be a company called Blue Coat that provided industrial strength man-in-the-middle type routers that Symantec bought. So now you have a top level certificate authority that owns a company that generates man-in-the-middle hardware for firewall and corporate stuff, that they now can generate keys on the fly for all of those domain names that you thought you were trusting HTTPS to. We're not going to go down the paranoid side. Remember, I want to sleep at night. So it's also really useful for in-situ debugging. And in-situ being in the place, you can put it on your computer. There's versions for Mac and Windows. Windows doesn't have some of the better GUI displays, but it works. But any Unix system does this really well. It all runs on Python, uses the net pcap libs, I think. And you can put it on any of the servers really easily. Go to man-in-the-middle-proxy.org. It's got idiot-proof installation instructions. Their documentation's a little cryptic, I think on purpose, that they go over the basics really quick. But there's how to install it. And it's commonly used for the evil purposes of a transparent proxy. And a transparent proxy is somebody at an ISP, oh, we'll pick on EPB. EPB could be sitting in the middle with a transparent proxy, and they do this for non-nefarious reasons, and run a man-in-the-middle type proxy that can be used at HTTPS levels and use it for caching Netflix videos or all kinds of stuff. But it's typically used as a transparent proxy for doing evil stuff as well as good stuff. It's not so easy to get a transparent proxy in the middle for debugging, because you would have to get a piece of hardware or a really weird IP tables configuration on a production server. Don't do it. It's not worth it for debugging. In evil mode, this is an example. This is my little Wi-Fi. This is the script that runs my Wi-Fi hacking rig. Turn on routing. Turn on DNS masquerading so I can redirect things to wherever I want to in my DNS server that I'm going to force them to use. Flush IP tables. Set up some routing where I'm redirecting port 80 and 443 through my local computer. Masquerade other stuff going in and out. And IP tables. I have to make my head hurt every time I do it. Last night I was playing around with IP tables trying to get this demonstration to work and screwed up and forgot that IP tables sometimes leaves things stuck in memory. So when you get done with IP tables and screwing around and all that, and you think that IP tables-F flushed everything and IP tables-L shows you that there's no rules, reboot. I literally wasted 2 hours because there were some rules stuck in the kernel that it no longer knew about, but it wouldn't let me talk to it. So let's do this for debugging purposes and not the nefarious purposes. I like doing it this way. You don't have to change server ports, but to me, because I typically run the server, this is easy. I'll put the server on a different port. Here I'm using port 440. So what that does is that moves my port 443 traffic, my normal SSL traffic, to somewhere else. And I just commented out in a Apache config, listen 443, told it to listen on 440. I'll change my virtual host directive to be the same, so it'll listen on port 440 or 443. I usually run both. And then on that machine, you run man-in-the-middle in reverse proxy mode. And we're going to actually do this in a minute. What's cool about reverse proxy mode, and there's some really great graphics on the man-in-the-middle proxy website on why this works and how it's doing and whatever, but we're going to do this in about 4 more minutes. I'm telling it to run on port 443. So man-in-the-middle proxy is answering to port 443 on my server, and I'm going to redirect all traffic that it sees to that URL. By the way, you can redirect anything to anything this way. And this way, it's not doing any lookups. It's just a straight redirect. You can also do it backwards. Let's say you can't run this on the server, but you're on a client. You could run this on your local machine, it's port 440, point to the server you want to talk to on port 443, and then tell your web browser to talk to localhost on port 440. That works as well. You'll see all the traffic going back and forth in SSL. It's really fun to grab your Twitter login and password and things like that this way. So, connecting. When you run this, man-in-the-middle proxy's got two basic modes. One's a GUI. Yes, I call that a GUI. And the other one is a just dump it out to the file mode. But we're running the GUI over there on the right, and I go to a URL and I grab my XML. It gives me, in a really nice little interface, it went ahead and saw my SSL traffic. There's my headers. There's my mode auth test. And over there it says mode equals auth test. It'll give me my parameters. And it's got multiple modes. This shows me my request. If I hit tab, it shows me my response. It shows me my headers, my raw data. And if I hit capital E, it'll export that to a curl command. So I can then replay that over and over and over again and go, wait a minute, why is this breaking? Oh, that's what I did. It's got a nice interface for that. Sometimes, though, you want to grab lots and lots and lots of data, and this is the other mode, MITM dump instead of MITM proxy. And it runs normal command line mode, lots of chatter on the screen. Writes it out to a file. I word wrap this because it really doesn't show it was all one line. But this is your header information and what it responded with. There's even a certificate. That's the public side of the certificate, not the key. But it shows everything that's going back and forth on the server, and sometimes that's useful for debugging. I typically don't have to get into bulk capture mode. Usually you'll see it pretty quick. This is my fun part. Things I find, and I play around in a world with an awful lot of bad software. Bad content types. A lot of people send XML as text plain. You'll see things that say that they're one thing and they're actually another. You'll see binary data. You'll see base64 encoded. And depending upon what tool set you're using to write code with for the API, that may change how your side or their side is interpreting things. You might be sending stuff as text XML, and they actually want it as ASCII. I've seen some weird things. I see a lot of misspelled headers and URLs. When you're sniffing this, like, oh, they think they're going here, but in reality, they're going there. Way too much of that. The byte order mark, I had that bite my ass not too long ago. We got a bunch of data uploaded to a server, and we couldn't figure out why when we imported it, it was just wrong. So depending upon the byte order mark, it'll be plain ASCII, UTF-8, UTF-16, which I've got a Microsoft database server somewhere that sends me UTF-16 data, and if I pull it up in the editor, what you see is character, @ character, @ character, @ character, @, and like, oh, that's why it doesn't work. Intermediate step on a Linux machine is a program called iConvert, ICONV, and you can convert just about any data type to any data type using iConvert. So we grab their data, write it out to a file, convert it, and then suck it in. Really nice way to do that. See a lot of errant white space, tab space, nulls. Try to do things where that doesn't break. See bad XML. I've not seen much good XML. I really wish XML would die. And XML itself isn't a bad thing. My problem is that the people that we're typically integrating with are using it the way that their IDE makes them use it at the idiot level, and so they do really bad, stupid things. They don't understand what they're doing. They're following instructions, and they're spitting out data, and they say, but make it work. I've seen a lot of undocumented features and bugs. SOAP action headers. Does everybody know what a SOAP action header is? When you're doing SOAP, the most important part to most systems is a little piece that goes in the header that you don't see in the data called a SOAP action. And And having the SOAP action wrong, you can send somebody valid SOAP XML, and if the SOAP action in the header is wrong, it bars or does the wrong thing. You can have a SOAP action header that says delete record and send them insert data, and they'll try to figure out how to delete it. Because in most SOAP XML systems, what they're really triggering off of is a thing that goes in the header, not in the data, not part of what you really see, but goes up in the header called a SOAP action. And it has shown to be the most important part in most of my SOAP debugging is this. I'm not a SOAP guy, never even knew it existed until I started sniffing, and then realized, oh, they're triggering off of that, not what's in the body of the XML. We've also seen a few other secret headers, credentials, lots and lots and lots of bad credentials, I'll keep off on the Java error. Anybody know what that is? That's basic auth. You know what format that is? Hey, I like this crowd. Yeah. This is why I love basic authentication. I think it's the best way to do it, but should never, ever, ever not be in SSL. Because that's just base 64 encoded. By the way, if you want to capture that, that says admin : example. It was my example code for this. Basic authentication is awesome, but it's not encrypted. And I've had sysadmins tell me, oh, well, it's encrypted, I can't read it. So, I've seen lots of crazy Java errors in the middle of an API call. Basic steps, curl. Here's a good example of a curl command. If you don't know a curl command, I'll send the data XML to someplace, and then I'll run it through XML lint so I can see the replay in nice XML. Does anybody want to see Man in the Middle live? We got time, Brett?
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes.
So, I find out how blind I am. No, this is just going to be a really simple example because I want to show how you can do whatever you want at home. What I wanted to get you to do is go to maninthemiddleproxy.org and play with this tool. That's the command I'm about to run. So that's an up and running proxy. If I come over here and rerun my, here's an example. So as I rerun that, because I'm not running the nefarious stuff, it gives me a new randomly generated SSL certificate. So it gave me a warning that it's unsafe. You may have to, if you're playing around, do -- insecure in your curl, or go read the page on how to turn on the certificate proxying, relaying generation. If you go to, on a man-in-the-middle proxy system that's set up as a transparent proxy, if you go to mitm.io, it will hand you a root certificate, which once installed on your machine, will make your machine blindly accept anything that man-in-the-middle proxy wants you to accept. Really handy for debugging. Think about that. But by the way, also think about the people who put root CAs on your system from the factory. Same problem. So that just did, it just captured at the very top of the screen, captured what I just did. I'm going to hit enter. There's my request. I hit tab. There's my response. There's a bunch of certificate details if you want to know it. From here, it's got really good help. I'm going to pull this up real quick. You can export, you can set up filters, you can even run little Python scripts to change the data on the fly as it's running. It's got all kinds of cool stuff you can do. For debugging purposes, I'm going to run a capital E, export as curl command. C for curl, save as file, yes, save data test2.curl. So I've saved it. What that's going to look like, and I'm going to keep that proxy up and running. there is a really long curl command that has all of my header information, my browser information. It will look just like me to that server. So if you're capturing something from Twilio to your server, or your server to a payment gateway, and you're going, oh, I got to figure out why this is breaking, you can now mimic everything about that very accurately. And because I don't have the nasty mode, my other version of this, I've got -- insecure, which is going to tell my curl command not to complain about the invalid certificate. And if I run that, by the way, I'm going to come over here. See my first post? I just ran that. There's my second one. I go down to my second one, and if I look at it again, as far as the man in the middle of proxy sniffing everything can see, it's exactly the same. Same levels of server, same levels of client, same levels of everything. And now I can sit and replay and beat my bad code over and over and over again until it stops breaking. And I think we're about done.
Do you modify the curl in your curl?
You can. Can you modify that curl post if you want to change things? Sure can. It's just text. You can pull it up in an editor and edit it. And wow, it almost worked. Yay! Questions?
We got time for one question. Anybody? No? Everybody's dumbfounded. They're just in
Wow.
pure shock.
It's either good or
Oh,
nobody
wait,
understood
right
the
back
thing.
here.
Yes, sir.
There we go.
What's the chance that my employer will block my ability to download this tool?
Depending on who your employer is, decent. One of the things I have a problem with is people who block hacking tools, Nmap, Sniffit, things like that. These are all really useful tools. It goes back to the gun debate. You know, the tool isn't necessarily evil. How you use it is. And I really think that as programmers, understanding what's going on underneath the hood is essential to locking down your applications and making sure they work appropriately and doing better integration. So, you know, if you work for TVA, who knows?
All right. Thank you, Mike. Everybody get it from Mike. Excellent talk. Yeah. Come back. That was great. That was really nice. Come back with us next week. We got Micah coming at us from Squid, and he's going to be talking about Prometheus, I think. Yeah, so that'll be a fun one. Justin, you want to come up and say a quick word about the launch tonight? Justin, who sponsored part of today's lunch, is going to come tell you about his launch this evening.
Hey guys, so I'm Justin Paul. I'm the founder of ING. Our platform is launching today at 7 p.m. What we've created is an online broadcast where in real time we're crowdfunding charities, but we've almost built it like a television broadcast, so everyone's watching in real time, chatting in real time, and donating to help causes. The platform is going to be on injii.com, and we're going to launch in real time at 7 p.m. So I'd like you guys to be on the platform, and especially you guys would like to see what we've done. It's 2 years of development, all of it's custom proprietary tech, and yeah, it'll be pretty cool. And we have 19 local artists, like musicians, bands, performers. They're all playing original content, and we're helping 6 local charities here raise money. It's injii.com.
Okay, Justin, round of applause. Yeah, all right. Thanks. That's all we have today for ChawDev edition 134, as we said earlier, and we'll see you next time.
I hope so.